be, and I'm going to challenge my fellow council and city staff going forward for next year and beyond to look at meaningful ways that we can cut and reduce spending. One of the things that I campaigned on, and I'm going to once again call on everyone to strongly consider this, I would like to see this be taken for a vote, but I absolutely think that it was irresponsible and that we should not, I didn't, but the rest of the council before me should have been voting to increase their own wages and salaries 68%. I think that that should have been, first of all, put to the public, not politicians deciding on their own pay. I think that if there was anything that politicians, us, decided on when it came to wages and salary, it could have been a cost of living adjustment. That's what the majority of city staff goes by. I think that would be a really good way to save $20,000 to $25,000 per year. But again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's one way that we could pretty easily come up with some money. I would challenge each and every one of my council members as we go into next year with the planning and that retreat that comes up in January. If each of us came to the table and came up with $100,000 and it didn't overlap with spending cuts or reductions, we could literally not compromise at all our current quality of life, but we would not be adding to the tax levy or burden at all. I think that's a very realistic ask, and it at the very least deserves a look. It's also troubled me. It's left, frankly, the council vulnerable in the past. It makes us vulnerable even right now. I don't like how we go about even looking at a budget. Let's all just sit there and lob every single one of our wishes and hopes at the wall and then come up with a number and then try to come down from that. I guess I believe in like the zero-sum budgeting where we start with what is absolutely necessary. We know that we need fire, police, EMS, all that, and we start adding that. And once we get to the absolute essentials, to me, that's what our budget should be. And if there is any additional revenue or funds, then we could look at how we want to allocate that. But to me, that's how you run a successful business, not the other way around. When I go to Target, I would love to walk out of there with 7 or 8 shopping carts, but the reality is I can't. I'm limited by what I have, whether it's my credit card, which is not smart practices, or whatever's in my wallet. And so when I go in there, I know that I can only spend $100 or $50 or whatnot. So I'm constantly sitting there going, what do I need? What can I afford? What can't I afford to live within my means? And I feel like forever and a day, that has been a common theme, that local government does not live within its means. And for me, that's just not acceptable. Government should not be the be-all, end-all. Government needs to do the absolute basics, and that's, to me, where it stops. We cannot and should not be all things for all people. I sit here, this is on my campaign webpage, but I sit here and I look at the last 11 years of tax levies, which I've got right here. That includes this year, and every single one of those years is an increase. To me, that's just not okay. I mean, each and every year we keep adding. I don't know anyone else that can continue to spend at the rate that we are spending. And I think that like us congratulating staff, congratulating each other that, okay, it's only 4.6% or whatever. To me, that seems like really almost like condescending and backwards because we're congratulating ourselves on what we aren't taking as opposed to the fact that we're still taking. I mean, sure, we could sit there and go for 10, 11, 12%, but that's also not responsible. But still, the fact that we're even remotely increasing it, I think that misses the point. We should not be congratulating ourselves for how little we're actually taking. At the end of the day, we're still asking each taxpayer to open up their wallet and hand us some money. And I think that, this would be more acceptable to me if this was a one-off or two-off type of thing. We came out of the pandemic. Obviously, some spending was needed. We had the ARPA funds, all that. But this is a recurring theme that each and every year, it doesn't stagnate. It certainly doesn't decrease. It just keeps going up. And for me, that's just not okay. For me, I would absolutely be okay with looking at line item vetoes. I think that we should look at each and everywhere we can possibly save money. Nothing should be off the table. I don't care if it's $20 or $100. Like anywhere that we can shave money and spare the taxpayer, I think is a really good, worthwhile cause. So as we, close, or as I close here, we're $83 million as a city in debt. The only tax levy increase that I would even remotely entertain or be interested in seeing would be if we were going to raise taxes to then put that money towards debt service reduction. But that's not, what's even remotely being discussed here. So, like I said, my challenge for everyone up here would be, can we come up with 5 different ways that don't overlap of things that we could do without that maybe would each, reduce the budget by $100,000, and we wouldn't have a positive tax levy. I would ask city staff too. That's great that you came up with the 9, the 7, the 5% plan, but I, at the very least, would love to see what a 0% tax levy for 2025 would look like. So, like I said, that's kind of where I am with this, but, I can pretty much say that I will not be under any circumstance voting to authorize this tax levy increase. For me, it goes against everything that I believe in and campaigned on. I think that we need to do better and to do better for our residents.
Okay, you got a chance to speak.
I did.
Now, the rest of the council is going to get a chance to speak, and you need, and you need to listen.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Okay. All right. So to some of those comments, I think there's a term that you like to use is altruism. There's a post that you have on one of your sites that has a 0% property tax as something that you wish that Hopkins could get to, and in all the cities that you mentioned as examples across the country have about 8 and 9% sales tax that they have on people. Altruism as well as our biggest cost that we have in the budget is we lost almost a third of our police department because we weren't keeping up with salaries with our police department. And so one of the biggest costs that we have here is to make sure that our police officers are paid and to be able to attract good police officers to the city, because I personally, and I think a lot of council members, care about the safety of the people in the city and being able to respond to issues. Our fire department unionized, again, to be able to get decent wages for the fire department and for to have a full-time transition to a full-time staff as the city grows. It is irresponsible to think about not keeping up with, not have any increases as you have a city that is growing by projected by almost 10%. That's an irresponsible comment. Capital projects. We have infrastructure that is corroding beneath our feet in the city, and you can call in and get some of that information if you want to, of sanitary lines that have collapsed. We had a neighbor on our street that just had a backup into their house from an old service line. We have old infrastructure. This is an old city, and so we have high costs with that. And then I just want to point out with the capital costs, Councilmember Goodland would not agree on the consensus for having a reduced street size, although there's traffic calming measures that went along with it. So our fire department, our police department weighed in with our city engineers, and Councilmember Goodland didn't want to do that. That was an additional $300,000 that's on his shoulders. For this, we talked about, he pushed for us having a 3-year project in our public works projects. That would have cost another $1 million for this city. You talked about wanting to do everything you can to save taxes, and he voted again. He was the sole vote against a $60,000 reduction, free of charge, no cost to the city, if we move to a 2-year election. He was the sole vote against that, and he told people because he thought he might lose an election. How irresponsible is that for a no-cost solution for this city? That is incredibly irresponsible. And he's sitting up here talking about salary increases for the city and saying that we should have COLA adjustments. Well, that's why we had the vote for the salary increase. We did a survey of all the cities around us. We are still like between 20 and 30% of lower salaries than all of the cities around us, because for years we weren't doing COLA adjustments. And so we had that conversation. If he had taken the time to sit down and listen to the exchange that we had as a council and talking about, we need to get up to, and we're still the lowest paid council. I'm still the lowest paid mayor of all our neighbors. This is the lowest paid council of all of our neighbors. And I find it interesting that he's talking about a $3,000 increase with council when he's taken $4,650 for his own travel. If he really cared that much about saving people money in the city, he would have declined taking those trips to Tampa and to Rochester, and he's asked that he go to DC, and that's not even included in that number. And so he wants to go travel to DC as well. When I add all of this up, I think he might be one of the most fiscally irresponsible council members in this city that we've had. And so to sit here and to take this kind of judgment from someone coming onto this council is just, it's a little hard to take. And so when I, we have a reduction that we went from 5.6% levy, and it went down to 4.9%. Part of that was I sat down and I asked our director and our city manager, what can we do to get below 5% for the city? And there was $130,000 that came from that. So he's talking about $25,000. We just reduced it by 4 times that by asking staff to sit down and come up with the priorities that they have. And they are good at doing it because they know what services that they can reduce in order to still offer great services in the city. So with that, I'll ask other council members to weigh in.
I just want to briefly piggyback on what you just said here a bit. Just now, when you mentioned the staff doing the work on this, they're the subject matter experts. Like, we are definitely elected to come up with ideas and to make these decisions. But for me, I'd like to, just really emphasize that the staff are the subject matter experts, and they're who I listen to for guidance when making these decisions. Another piggyback I just want to say really briefly is, in addition to the argument that seems to be ongoing about council salaries, you're free to give up your $12,000. I think that would be really generous of you. So rather than asking everyone else to go back, maybe you should just look within yourself and say, I don't need my $12,000. There's part of your $20,000 you're looking to get back right there. So that's all for me.
I think for me, just to kind of go back on some of the other stuff, you said that our taxes are not attracting businesses, and I understand that taxes are something that businesses have to put up with. I know Mr. Anderson out there has a great business on Main Street, and I know I have talked with several business owners, whether it goes from Pink Ivy, Amy's Cupcake Shop, Bar Sienna's coming in. There is a lot of attraction here to Hopkins, so I just want to point out that that is not something, we are not pushing businesses away. I think Main Street is more vital than it was 10 years ago. So I just want to point out that we are still trying to attract businesses, marketing out there that this beautiful gem that we've had for so long is now known. And people want to be here, they want to live here. So I disagree with that. And then last but not least, the sustainability piece. I know that we did cut the $30,000 from the solution or climate solution fund. And I think having Mayor Hanlon, be able to take that amount away, I know that's very important to you. But I do think that we can't be a city that is oblivious that climate change is happening. And in any way that we can help our residents, our businesses, purchase better appliances, solar panels, also, this thing about hiring another staff to the forest management. Right now they have enough staff to maintain what we have and not necessarily come up with solutions to make our city better. So I think a lot of this is we as a city are looking at what we are facing and what we are facing in the future as well. And I understand everybody else on this council pays property taxes as well. I understand that it does become a burden. But I think the quality of life that we have here and the amount of compliments I get from both business owners and residents here, I think that values what we have here, and I want to keep that. And so I think the staff did a great job on looking and, taking some things here and there and making it better at the 4.92. So I think that in the future, we can continue to look down the road on what we can do. But I think the public safety we have here, public works, the employee retention is very important to me here.
I think it's really unfair to judge and say, I mean, we've had 8 meetings before this, and now you're gonna bring up wages and everybody else's things, infrastructure. Before the meeting, right at the meeting here, bud, you were sitting on your phone looking all this stuff up. When you do the council job, you spend hours into reading these packets. So the $12,000, $11,000, it isn't a lot of money. And it upsets me when people say that, because you spend a lot of time onto this for a part-time job, whatever you want to call it, but it's full-time commitment to the city, right? I think other things like infrastructure, and you talk about 83 million or 80 some million dollars, that is a lot of money. That's no joke. But think of all the projects we've done in this city over the last 10 years and even longer, that we're not going to get a call from somebody on 12th that the water mains broke, on 11th that the water mains broke. There's another one in that next year's project. There's 3 since we set up this project of infrastructure failures. Those are failing those neighbors that live in the avenues. That's an equity issue. My street was done. I can flush my toilet, I can do my laundry, the water goes away. It's a fairness and equity and investments in infrastructure. It doesn't vote red, it doesn't vote blue, but when the problems happen, who gets calls? City staff. It's a reflection on us to move forward on those projects. 4 square miles, I think the other thing, we don't have Home Depot, we don't have Walmart, we don't want big box. So that's with the taxes, it's really hard. You can't start, I don't think you can really start a city on a $0 budget, because every time that I say yes behind this dais, we're spending tax dollars, right? So you look at police, fire, 3/4 of your city budget. I don't know where we would cut. I have a few ideas of where things that we could cut, but it'd be super unpopular. And I feel like there would be way more calls to City Hall because I made a decision to cut something than coming together and collectively, sorry, my thoughts are going 100 miles an hour, but like with the 9 meetings, I've been part of councils in the past. I think you guys, I came late to the game. You guys have done a great job coming up with options and narrowing that down and bringing that down to under 5 now. Like when we opened up the packet, I was like, oh, wow. You know, we had a conversation and things were able to knock down even farther. So yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, one thing I should add too is, again, all of us, I think everyone on this council takes the taxes. We all pay taxes. I think they're high. The taxes that we pay in Hopkins are high. They have been getting better, especially in reference to our neighbors, and that's a strategy. We got into this problem over decades of making decisions and going through some really high, some years where we had 10%, 11%, 12%, and it's going to take us years to get out of it. And to come in and think that you can slash everything is just not a responsible way to manage a budget. And to go around and to say that the city of Hopkins staff are operating on a lot of fat, I mean, the people in this city are, one person is doing what an entire division is doing in a lot of other cities, and cutting one person here or cutting one program here is a big loss when you're operating in this really tight of a budget that these folks have to operate on to do their job. Yeah, so that's what I would say, just to give context to this, and also that, one of the main strategies that we have for getting out of our tax burden here in Hopkins is when we have some of these apartments, the Trilogy apartment, the Ovation apartment, where we can get density where it's allowed through zoning. So on our Main Street, in some of the areas on Blake and Excelsior, on some of the new developments that are gonna go on in Shady Oak, and Excelsior, that is where you can get reductions, and you can see it in these taxes when we have a tax levy that's going up by 4.96, and the percent increase last year on the average homeowner was, William, I promised to get to your Edina piece, so I'll get to that right before. All right, so we had a 0.14% increase on medium home value last year and a 2.8. So that's below the increase in the levy. And the reason for that is that it's shifting to these bigger properties. And so we're getting reductions on the burden on people. And we all take it really serious. All of us take that very serious, and that is also a strategy. And the only thing that I would say, the Edina thing, they felt comfortable in letting loose in their document that went out to folks, is that you can't buy the median value home in Edina is $712,000.
687.
Okay, all right, 687. Well, William wants to. Well, I'll accept that. I'll accept that. And so, that's almost double what it is in Hopkins. And so, of course, you can raise taxes less on a house that is that much more. But the truth is that the median value home in Hopkins is half that of Edina. So I'm not really, and they're raising their taxes by 13%, 13.14% this year. So that's what I have to say to that.
So I guess I would like a chance to respond. So I think it's kind of interesting that I'm somehow now being painted as somehow not fiscally responsible when, again, my entire campaign has been on that, and I believe virtually almost everything I've done has demonstrated that. I think that's interesting if you want to go after me for taking these elaborate trips when you've got Councilwoman Garrido, Councilman Hunke, and Councilman Kuznia, who also have gone on these exact same trips, and that option was open to you as well. So I don't really think that's. I don't think that's a fair, claim to make. But as far as I'll go through as many of these as you want. So first and foremost, the reason why I was even interested in the first place of looking at a 3-year construction project was because that would have been a less catastrophic burden on the taxpayers over 3 years versus the 2. Fully getting that, yes, it would have cost somewhat more money to do that over 3 years and spread that.
$2 million.
But it would have also kept these levies down as opposed to 2 really high levies. Next, when we're talking wages and salaries, most of these other surrounding communities that pay as much or more have a much greater tax base. The mayor of Lakeville makes $15,000 a year, which is the same as the mayor of Hopkins, but Lakeville has a 40,000+ tax base. That's a huge difference. We have roughly right around 11 or 12,000. So when you look at that, they're not apples to apples. That tax base does matter. Let's see. One of the biggest things that I wanted to advocate for, too, is, again, while I do believe that there's altruism, we'll use that word, towards sustainability, that is something that we historically have not had in Hopkins. It's newer spending, and I would have been much more interested from last year's $300,000 or this year's $120,000. I would have liked to have seen that go towards paying for the fire department. We know that they unionized this last year. We know that those costs go up. To me, that would have been a much better use of that money, where then everyone collectively would have gotten some sort of incentive and reduction on their taxes if that money had been used towards that. Let's see. What else do I want to bring up? I think that we do not do a good enough job of looking for every possible solution and way that we can monetize and make money and save the taxpayers money. What we authorized a few council meetings in the past to try to get some of these properties on Main Street and the one right in back of your house, and to potentially free them up and for development so that they can help contribute to the tax to the future taxes. I think that is a really nice, good start, but I think that there's many more types of projects like that we could and should be looking into doing. I know I had, let's see, one more big point. Let's see. Oh, the other thing, too, that I wanted to bring up that has not been brought up this meeting that also deeply troubles me when we are, again, congratulating ourselves and trying to compare ourselves to other cities. Oh, we're only going to raise it 4.9% or 4.6% is, again, how we got there. And this is a repeat of last year before I was on the council, which is we tapped into cities' reserves to artificially to pay down on, to make a down payment on this levy, which artificially lowers it. And, therefore at least looks on the outside like, oh, look, we're being, a little bit more fiscally in line and responsible because we don't have quite as high of a levy. But that to me puts us as a city at a much higher risk. We are less, that's a less sustainable, less financially stable position to be at. It is certainly a 1 or in this case 2-year solution at best. It's certainly not a long-term solution. And again, I want to go right back to why aren't we looking at, actually cutting our spending. And then the final thing that I want to say, going back to the 60,000 that you had brought up from about 2 or 3 months ago, when I was the sole vote, and I'm proud of it, that I voted against making the elections to even years. I don't think that should fall in mine or any of the people up here's laps. I think that just like the wages and salaries, that should go back to the people, which was another central reason why I voted against it. It now goes back to the commission, and the commission now can sit there and put that to the people, which is what I think really where it should belong. If the city wants to move it to even years, yes, one of the benefits would be the cost reduction, anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. But, again, there's different things that come with that as well, and different things that I certainly had given me pause and reservation as well. If you sit there and make every municipal election on even years, do those elections get buried in the minutia that are the state and national elections? It's a simple fact that on off-year elections, we can make better connections with residents when we're out there campaigning, and it is just a school board or a council election.
That's your opinion. That's not a fact, Councilmember.
But I think it's a worthwhile consideration. So.
I just have two things for you, Councilmember Goodland. Number one, there are only 8 Minnesota cities that have odd year elections for their council. Only 8. And it was the whole fact that you could save our taxpayers $60,000 per tax cycle or more. This is what I'm just getting very frustrated is this is what you were campaigning on, but when you have the chance to save, you vote it down.
I believe that the people should get to vote on that.
And they won't.
Well, the commission, let's just get a little order.
You should read your emails.
And then I just want to say one other thing, and then I'm done. The mayor of Lakeville does make the $15,000 the same as our mayor. But do you value our mayor less than the Lakeville's mayor? Patrick does a lot of different things, a lot of committees, a lot of work that is behind the scenes. And I don't see him to have a lower salary just because of the size of our city.
Well, and here's the thing I want to say on the council salaries or the mayor's salary as well is there's I always like the poem of lies of commission and lies of omission. This is a lie of omission that you intentionally do. You told me that in fact, you told this whole group that you're okay with lying to people to make people angry so that they vote for you.
That.
You did say
You
that.
did.
You did.
A year ago.
You told all of us. And this is one of those issues. And the reason that it's a lie of omission is even tonight, if you go back in the recording, that you said it's a 68% increase. That's all you ever say. You don't ever tell people. The mayor of Hopkins gets paid $15,000. The city council members get paid $12,000 for all of this. And if you bring that up as the issue, people understand that. They think that's reasonable. Anyone that I talk to, and there's a reason that if you go back any of the times that you brought this up, is you don't mention that intentionally because it's a lie of omission, because you know people won't be angry by that. So that's what I have to say to that. And then on the sustainability piece, it's the only piece in our budget that a rental property owner can use. It was a fund that was passed for people to invest in their properties. We have old buildings in this city that they can invest in energy efficiency and ways to save money. And if I were to guess on all those projects, and we're going to get a full report back to council, but I would guess that the people that have used those climate solutions funds over the lifetime of their projects have saved anywhere from $750,000 to $1.2 million. It's the only thing in our budget where people of the city can actually save money. So to call it altruism, it's business. It's an economic development strategy for the city that separates us. And so it's not altruism, it's business. And we can sit down and give you some of the details of how the programs work so you actually understand them when you're recommending them for cuts.
But wouldn't we be much better off dumping that same money into something that would help everyone, AKA the police or the fire, which then would reduce the overall money needed for the general fund, which we all contribute to, so therefore we would all have a reduction. I would be more interested in saving every single person that pays taxes, even if it's $20, $30, versus the few or whatever percentage does take advantage of that grant.
That's not it's dollars that were put on to ratepayers' bills that go back to ratepayers. That's how it was passed before council. And so to use it for something else, and it saves a lot more money. Over the years, everyone in the city does have access to that fund. Everyone here has access to that fund. So that's what I would just say to that and to those comments. And I don't know.
I got one more. In regards to the reserve, I just want people to know that there is a reserve. There's a policy out there. right? Those already are your tax dollars. So we're taking your tax dollars to buy down this levy. Otherwise, you pull that money out and we can sit on it, right? And that number goes up. Those are tax dollars that you've used in the past. I think that's an important thing to bring up. Those are your dollars. We're taking your dollars and putting them back into this levy. It's not a practice that I think we can do every year, but there's different things that come forward next year or the following year. Things come off TIF. You get different sources of income and revenue. So I think it's important to note that those are tax dollars already that were collected.
Correct. All right, any other comments from council?
But I just want to ask a question to Councilmember Kuznia. If in fact we were at a 0%, tax levy or even a negative one, again, which would be pretty unrealistic, but still, even if we were at a 0% levy, couldn't we then use those reserves to actually go towards debt relief service? And actually pay down on our
Sure, I
on
would
our
guess,
debts?
but you said it's unrealistic. I don't truly believe that it's a realistic thing to be zero, bud. It's not.
Hold on, did you just ask if we can use that reserve to pay down?
Debt services.
That's what we just
That's
did.
what we're doing.
We're paying down the levy, but I'm talking about towards our 83 million.
So you want to not reduce the tax pressure on people and pay down our...
No. I'm saying if we had this year a 0% tax levy, then could we have tapped into the reserves and used that money to pay down towards the 83 million?
Councilmember, we're using the reserve funding to help pay down our tax levy burden because we've had, when you look at the permit fees that come in or other fees that come in or taxes that come in, that we were underestimating what those would be. We brought in more, and so now we have money, and we're using that money, taxpayer money, to lower their tax pressure.
I understand.
This may be a conversation that's worth having offline.
Sure.
Okay.
I just see that the city of Hopkins has a very, very high city tax rate, and it's out of control in my mind. And I think I don't know where it's all being spent. I don't know the.
Sir, we had time for public comment, and I asked you if you want to send in comments, you're welcome to do that if you want to send in an email.
I will.
Thank you. Okay, any more comments from council? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to adopt? Do I have a motion? Let me have you do that.
I move to adopt Resolution 2024-069, approving the 2025 tax levy, 2025 HRA levy, and adopting the 2025 general and special revenue fund budgets.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Now we do a roll call on this, starting with Councilmember Goodland,
No.
Councilmember Kuznia,
Yes.
myself, yes. Councilmember Hunky,
Yes.
Councilmember Garrido.
Yes.
There's 4 yeses and 1 no. That motion carries.